Steamboat Tomahawk. Steamboy? Have you seen Steamboy? We've talked
I saw
about
Steamboy in the theater, yeah.
My name is Garrett. Welcome to I Like to Movie. My name is Garrett Smith.
My name is Dan Scully. Thank you guys for your patience in waiting for us in a week off. I've been horribly ill, and last
Dan's
week
been
was
ill.
not fucking happening.
Dan's been ill, but not that kind of ill. You don't have to worry about Dan. He's fine, but he's ill.
Yes, and it was an unlicensed illness. I did not have a license to ill for this one. So it just kind of came out of nowhere, and it's just been a wild week of sickness and family drama. And hello, Doris.
We got a cute Doris cameo right up top.
Yeah, Jenna's out of town, so Doris is very, very needy for attention. She sat and watched me poop today.
Oh.
It's just what she does. Her paw reaches under the door, so I let her into the bathroom, and then she sits there and stares at me like Church from Pet Sematary. I'm like, okay, you're not making it easy to shit, but luckily I made a pot of chili this week. That offsets it, makes it real easy to shit.
Tori picked up an extra day at work, so Spock has also been getting lonely because it's less time with people around the house. And,
is he barricaded out right now?
Yeah, he's just downstairs. Like we have a little gate between the staircase, so like he can't get up here if I don't want him to get up here.
Yeah,
he does fine. He just like chills on the couch and stuff. Like
that's good.
He just has reign of the downstairs, and he's usually pretty good down there. But
she's gonna sit on my thigh like this for the entirety of the.
I love
thing.
It.
Hi, Stinky.
Spock is just like too much of a wild man to like even be around us when we're doing recordings. He just like he can't sit still for more than like 10 minutes.
He's a little pupper. He's so excited about life. It's new.
Yeah.
New life, new home.
Very excited, but
he's a happy boy.
Yeah, he's same thing though. He's getting like lonely, and also I think the time change has fucked him up. Like he just in the middle of the afternoon this week will just start like shouting from downstairs, and I think it's because he's hungry and thinks it's time to eat, but it's actually now like another hour before it's time to eat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. They do respond to like those kinds of triggers. Like I know that I guess now you mention it, like Doris, she likes to hang out by the bedroom door in the morning.
Yeah.
And it seems to be at first light, and she seems to be doing it earlier and earlier. So I guess that would make sense. Yeah. You're an idiot. All right, she's right there. She's just gonna sit there and stare. Here, Doris, have some camera time.
Hello, Doris. She's so cute. I love her collar.
Oh, that's a Jenna. Well, not a Jenna original. She didn't design it, but she picked it out. She makes those decisions.
I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah. You just got a compliment.
And I like that
you can't hear it and you don't know English.
I like that her name tag is a dog bone name tag.
Oh yeah, that's just part of the fact that we live in a silly household.
Yeah, I like it. Well, we have lots of movies to talk about and catch up on with each other, which I'm like very looking forward to doing because I have seen lots and lots of good stuff lately.
Oh yeah, me too.
And there's like one big thematic thing we can definitely talk about, but I kind of wanted to start by talking about something that I know we both watched, which I don't even really know how to say the name of. Kate?
Dude, I would say Kite.
Kite.
That's how I would read it, just phonetically. Khaite.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But that's the name of the clothing brand, I believe. Yeah. And so this was Sean Baker's short film that's supposed to showcase a certain season of clothing.
So I believe, I could be wrong about this, but if you look up this movie on Letterboxd, it goes by the title Kite FW21. And I think that's in reference to Fashion Week 2021.
That would make sense.
I think this is like a short film that was commissioned for whatever Fashion Week is. I'm sure that's like the Golden Globes of fashion, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm sure it's like a big event that happens every year. And I'm assuming that's what this is that he was like hired to make a short in support of that or as like an advertisement or something. But what it is like this, Walter Hill 70s Warriors inspired short film starring a bunch of fashion models, and it fucking rocks.
It rocks. And it's like weird, like it captures a pretty broad span of emotion. Yes. It has sort of a devil may care, fuck it all punk rock attitude, but it also has like an odd tenderness to it.
Yes.
It's got this fucking killer Ace Frehley song.
Sure does.
As the soundtrack, which I have a respect for what Kiss is. I don't really care about any of their music.
Yeah.
But I liked that solo Ace Frehley song more than I like any Kiss song I ever heard in my life.
I thought that music was so good for that short. Like it
Yeah.
really, really works for the energy of that short. It's great.
It's like I don't even know how to describe this. I mean, I would just have to play the song. But wait, the name of the song is, because I immediately added it to every fucking playlist that I had. Is Ace Frehley.
Did I tell you, by the way, he was on an episode of Never Not Funny somewhat recently?
Really?
Yeah, you should look
way.
it up. It's pretty funny and weird.
It's called New York Groove, and it was a remix version of New York Groove. And that's wild. I can't what's weird is I really don't have any concept of any member of Kiss's personality except for Gene Simmons, who's just like a rotten fuck. Yeah. And and much respect, whatever. He just seems like such a rotten fuck. But I don't know. This song totally metal. I love it.
Yeah, he was kind a delight on Never Not Funny, so recommend. You could get a little flavor of his personality. He's just like a weird old man that has been a rock and roller his entire life and seems to have like no perspective other than from inside of that very weird insular world. You know what I mean? Like he just was like an old maniac that clearly had like never been outside of a tour bus, basically,
I wish I could live that life.
Yeah.
I wish I could know all of the stuff that I want to know and unknow all the stuff that I currently know. It would bring me such peace. Such peace. But I'd also, if I was a rock star, there's a 99% chance that I'd be dead for the last 10 years. So, that's just...
Honestly, that was like the miracle of the whole thing. Every time he was telling a story, I was like, and you're alive and sitting here to tell it.
It's wild. Like the fact that most of Led Zeppelin's still alive.
Yeah.
No, I think it's half now because, but like, what's his name? John Paul Jones did not, oh no, he's still around, isn't he?
I have no idea.
Oh, you know what? I was thinking of The Who. Entwistle died, but he died an older man. Keith Moon was the only one who died young.
Right, yeah. I don't know a lot about those.
Oh, fair enough. I love that shit. I'm trying. Do you know which character Ace Frehley was in Kiss?
No, I don't.
Peter Criss, I think, was the cat.
Okay.
Gene Simmons was the Starface.
Right. What were the other two characters even?
I don't know. Let's see. I bet. I mean, it's certainly Googleable.
Because all I ever think about is their tongues. Never really think about how distinctive the makeup is from guy to guy. But I know that I know that that's true. They have like 4 distinctive, makeup jobs.
Okay, so Paul Stanley was the Star Child.
Okay.
The Demon was Gene Simmons.
The Demon, right.
Catman was Peter Criss. So Ace Frehley was Space Ace.
Space Ace! That's right.
He's Space Ace. Let's see if I can get a good picture of Space Ace face.
Does he have like a bunch of stars on his face? How did he Space Ace?
Yeah, let's see. Space Ace.
It's just like a Millennium Falcon on his face.
Man. Then I'd start listening to Kiss. Wow. The first result is a cool mask for COVID that allows you to be
Space Face?
Be Space Face Ace. And then, okay, well, the best picture I can find is actually his whole face on a mask, which he had the star eyes.
Space Face, of course.
Space Face.
Yeah, of course.
There you go.
I do like that. That looks great. I'm into it.
Well, this is the one. I kind of want this one. I don't know why it's modeled on a child, but that's pretty cool. And you'll notice that I quite literally did search Space Ace face. So, right on.
That is
nice.
That is wildly funny that that's modeled on a child.
But yeah, well, I mean, who wants to see it on the craggy old face of a former Kiss member?
Oh, it would be funny if they had him do the makeup and then put that on to advertise that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I saw a guy did a video where he had like his own face printed onto a mask.
Oh yeah.
And like it's funny, but it's also like, well, like the gag is he goes in and people go, "Oh, pull your mask up," and then he goes, "This is my mask." But then to reveal the punchline, he has to pull the mask down. I'm like, you blow it.
Yeah, yeah. You're still fucking it up, man.
Yeah, you. It was funny until you defeated the entire purpose, you idiot. But what are you gonna do? Actually, I have I don't know where it is, but Jenna has like a SAG catalog,
Mm-hmm.
And on it shows, the cover is like what SAG is doing for the industry to react during, COVID times. And on the front is a picture of Danny Trejo working with somebody. And Danny Trejo has a mask that has Danny Trejo's face.
Oh, that's great.
It's very wild looking, but like it just makes him look cleaner and younger since his face is equivalent to the surface of the moon. It was
Looks like a photograph of Mars.
Wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, that movie was wicked, dude, man, and it's only like 4 minutes. I must have watched it like 5 times.
Yeah, I mean, it's like for right now, it's the best thing I've seen this year.
Nice.
It is for me currently the best 2021 movie. I just really liked it. The energy of it's great. The other thing is, I mean,
the editing's on point too.
Yeah, the editing's great. The reason I was like so fascinated by it is, it looks like a movie that Walter Hill made in 1968.
Yeah,
like
for the modern fashion.
Yeah, like it really looks like old film. And what I know of Sean Baker is that like it might not be. Like he might have shot that digitally and found a way to make it look like that. Or I don't know. Like what I want to know is how it was shot. Because he is like
he's a great Letterboxd follow, because everything he writes, he very rarely reviews the content of the movie. He just lists what he knows about the lens or the film stock or the lighting or whatever it is, and then how it was exhibited to him. So like I would not be surprised if he either did that legit 1970s film stock style or had the tech to make it look like that. Like both seem very on brand for him.
I agree. And that's the thing. I really want to know how he did it. Like, I would really like to know, because like one of my questions when going to see movies all the time, in the last, I don't know, I guess like 5 years, is just like, how come movies don't look like that anymore? Like, I understand why they don't. It's just cheaper to make them digitally, and we're moving that direction, all that kind of stuff. But like, how come more people aren't making the artistic choice to make movies that look like a movie from 1992 or a movie from 1982 or a movie from 1960? And I feel like what I'm always told is like, because you really can't anymore. It's like, we're just not using the same technology to do that. But to me, like, this short looks to me to prove that like, no, we can. We just have to choose to do it. Now, it might mean it's more expensive or what. I understand that there might be certain caveats that come with that. But to me, it felt like, oh, this proves that like, it's not that we can't do this anymore. Like there is a way to do this. We just need to.
Film doesn't not exist.
Right.
I mean, I guess you do have the freedom to do it when you're working with a 4-minute final product.
I was gonna say, I think it probably has to do with the actual like the length of the project, the like maybe even the amount of time that it was made, all that stuff. I'm sure was like contributed to being able to do it this way.
Yeah. I think too. I mean, like he is the kind of guy. Like he did the cell phone movie.
Yeah.
And then he did, when we talked to him about Florida Project, that was all film.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, so who knows? I mean, we could probably ask him. There's probably
I know. I would.
That answer is
really
out there
know.
to exist.
I know.
I know that a while ago, I think it was when like Better Call Saul first premiered, because Breaking Bad is known for being shot entirely on film.
Oh, I don't know if I knew that actually. That's cool.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to say entirely, but like I think they made it a point to do it on film as much as possible. It might be entirely.
Yeah.
And so Vince Gilligan, in setting up Better Call Saul, wanted to do it the same way. And everyone on the team was like, listen, man, like we get it and all, but like, come on, like there's an issue here with that. And he said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to shoot something in digital. We're going to shoot the same thing. We're going to shoot it on film. And I want you to play it back for me after we fix everything up blind.
Yeah.
And if I can't tell the difference, then we'll just go digital.
Yep.
And he was like, lo and behold, they did it right. And I could not tell the difference. So I think it is certainly possible to do the work and get that film look. Now, I've not seen Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to how I think it looks. But I'm inclined to trust Vince Gilligan on that front.
We may have talked about this before. I think it was... I might be wrong about this, but I think it was Ryan Johnson, cinematographer, was talking about how like he only shoots digitally, and he just like there are a bunch of tools that are available to digital filmmakers that help you sort like you can kind of get quote unquote back to a very filmic look using digital photography if you know how to use like a bunch of these like very specific and sort of like I think probably pretty difficult to use like tools.
Yeah,
But he was like, but it can be done. It's not like you can't do it. It's like you have to learn how to do these things, you know?
I imagine it's a mix of like, we're going to have to light it a certain way.
Right.
You're going to have to frame it a certain way.
Right.
You're going to want to have, like, because it even comes down to just the way the camera moves, it's going to capture differently. Because, like, I've seen stuff where people are like, oh, we're going to add some film grain. And it's like, oh, that's the same as when someone gets crazy plastic surgery on the face. You don't look younger. You just look like you had work done. It's like, this doesn't look like it was shot on film. It looks like you rigged it.
Yeah.
But like, there's, what was the name of that movie? It's called it was a product of Project Greenlight. And Project Greenlight, as I understand it, is filmmakers submit like a pitch deck and a script, and then they get the ability to make it. And this one guy, the most recent one, I believe, had a good script and all that, and then the movie sucked. And the reason the movie sucked was he demanded to shoot it entirely on film.
And
therefore they lost all options to do as many takes as a young aspiring filmmaker might need to get the right performance of the right shot. So you end up getting this thing that it's like, oh wow, you did it. You made a movie entirely on film and every other aspect is slapdash.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's tough. So, but like with 4 minutes, you can kind of do whatever you want so long as you can afford the stock.
It's so impressive looking, I think. And oh man, I maybe we can interview him again. I would really love to ask about this short in particular.
Let's see if I can find the email. It's in there somewhere.
Yeah. Dude, what else you got? Like, one of the things I got is I rewatched Pump Up the Volume for the first time in a while because
you've recommended that to me.
Birthday.
I have not seen that yet.
It is wonderful. It held up great. I have no idea if it would hold up for other people. Like, I saw this when I was like 15 for the first time, and it very much spoke to me as a 15-year-old. And I feel like when
that era.
Yeah, I feel like when I rewatch it, I tap right back into that moment and feeling, and maybe that's part of why it still works for me. I'm not really sure, but I like it. And rewatching it, like, I thought it was like really well directed, really well edited, like all this stuff that I'm,
Who made it?
The director is somebody that I wasn't really that familiar with otherwise, although he did do Empire Records. It's the same. Alan Moyle. Alan Moyle is his name.
Moyle.
Yeah. You know what else Alan Moyle directed? Jailbait, the MTV TV movie that I remember being on TV.
I remember that movie.
Yeah.
It looks like he was an actor in Rabid.
Well, there you go. Alan Moyle, Allan, directed Empire Records and Pump Up the Volume. I have never seen Empire Records, actually. I know people like that movie a lot. I even think that might be the more popular movie of these two movies. But
I don't love Empire Records. Empire Records is definitely one of those movies. Like, it's funny. There's like a lot in it to like. But it's one of those movies that like I didn't grow up with, and then I watched it as an older person. I was like, all right. But like, I imagine if I didn't watch Can't Hardly Wait as a 12-year-old, I would probably watch that and be like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of has that. But Empire Records is, I have one beef with it. Empire Records, if I remember correctly, is where the idea that you shouldn't wear the shirt of the band you're seeing came from.
Oh, okay.
And
gotcha.
I take umbrage with that.
Yeah.
Wear the shirt. Wear what you want. Go crazy.
I'm with you.
Wear no shirt.
Yeah.
Write the band's name on your titties. I don't give a shit. Go crazy. Yeah. Just enjoy the show. Make yourself happy. You're having fun tonight. You're at a concert.
I'm with you. I would probably embarrass myself if I ever got to meet like some of my favorite directors because I'm sure I would wear shirts with their movies on them.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would make a point. I mean, fuck. I watched the Snyder Cut last night, and I put on a Batman shirt. I watched it all alone. But I put on a Batman shirt because, oh, hell yeah. I actually rewatched Your Next recently. That movie's just exquisite.
I'm wearing it because, Godzilla vs. Kong is coming up. I'm with you.
It's going to be so cool.
I'm right there with you. I love that. I do the same thing, man. Like, even when Tori and I watched a Cronenberg movie recently, and I put a Cronenberg shirt on to watch a Cronenberg movie at home with my partner. I like doing that.
That's the way to go. I remember when we all saw the last Star Wars movie. What was Andy's buddy's name? Oh, what is his name? He's a good guy. Well, shout out to him. He'll cut your hair. But I was sitting next to him and he goes, you want to see something cool? And he opens up his bag and he's just got a couple of his favorite Star Wars figures in Ziploc bags that came to the movie with him. Why? Why not? We're at Star Wars. You bring your toys. It was awesome.
It's a real Joe
Murdoch
That
was more entertaining than the movie.
Yeah.
The which I'm just because it's like talked to death, and I've just made it a point that I don't feel like fucking talking about it. I loved the Snyder Cut. That's all I gotta say.
Oh, good.
I'm like so beyond even caring.
Yeah.
But I fucking loved it. It's really
like
incredible.
The whole world feels. Everybody's like, we just don't want to talk about this.
I just don't want to talk about it. Like, I was excited for it. It delivered everything I wanted and then some. It has a really wild cameo that is pretty awesome.
I've heard. I think I know what you're referencing.
Yeah, action looks great. It's amazing in hindsight to see, like, because like the Justice League that we got is like, you know, like I was able to enjoy it for what it was, but it's a pretty fucking, like, you can tell it's a fucking hack job.
Yeah.
And it is insane how much more of a hack job it is when you see like what the original idea was, because it's like Lord of the Rings. It's a big fucking beefy movie, but I gotta say, as someone who doesn't love a lengthy movie, those 4 hours flew. It's really well done. You know, and so if it's for you, I think you'll like it.
Scott Wampler tweeted something you just said made me think of this, like about like where he was like specifically to the hack job point, where it was just like, in retrospect, it's like, it's laughable what Warner Brothers did with this movie.
Yeah.
Because watching this 4-hour cut, I could shave 2 hours off of this and make it a presentable, release it in theaters movie. And it would still be better than the weird hack movie that they did put out. You know, like his point was like, there is a way to trim what's here into an actual movie. You didn't need to actually like remake 80% of it and turn it into whatever it was.
It still could have been done. Yeah. And there's just so many things, like there's just so many choices that you go like, that we've had this conversation before. Like, how many times have, now granted the circumstances involved family tragedy and other things like that, but like so many times where producers get their hands into it, and it's like, how often does that ever actually make a better product? You know, like I think maybe there's less risk in just trusting the filmmaking team.
Yes.
But you know,
I think that like movies are shifting in this direction where they're like being made from the get-go by producers. Yeah. And maybe
especially in the world of superhero movies. I mean, these are products more than anything.
For sure. And maybe there's something to that where like we could be a little less dismissive to that in the sense of like, well, that's just a different way to be creative, right? These projects are originating that way, and they.
Well, and also too, if a producer makes the right choice, we just don't hear about it.
Yeah, and I think in those cases, it's like you're literally talking about a producing team that is being creative, right? They're literally being like creative producers. They're building this thing from the ground up or whatever. But I think what you and I are talking about, and what definitely happened with this movie, is like producers coming into a project in the midst of it, or after it has already been produced, to then make their own changes to make their own changes that are not based on like, again, like kind of incepting a project and figuring out how to get it to that point from the beginning. You know, it's like an afterthought kind of thing. And you know, with this movie, this is such a weird, difficult one, because it's like this was all born of like this very personal tragedy. So it doesn't feel as
it's not as cynical of a...
Yeah, right.
Like, it's cynical in terms of, you could tell they were like, it's more important that we get it out at the right time.
Yes.
And then that turned out to be completely irrelevant, when they released it, Right. But I will say that one of the things that I think really made me appreciate this is, whether someone appreciates Zack Snyder's style as a visual artist can be discussed. It might just not be to your taste. But there's more style on this movie than in any Avengers movie I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not interested necessarily in making the comparison. I have enjoyed both the MCU, and I don't see why we do one or the other. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I've liked and disliked entries in each canon for whatever. But I watched this, and I watched something like, Infinity War.
Yeah.
And I go, I see so much more style being applied here. Whether it's to your taste or not, we can talk. Yeah. But I just see actual style being applied as opposed to product being built. And as a fan of Zack Snyder, I really appreciate it. And I think it came together nicely here. And it also just like really reflects poorly upon Whedon, who was chosen to stay in the movie, because like a lot of the plot really hinges upon Cyborg and Flash, and they have these fully fleshed out characters, and because they're not Batman, Superman, or Wonder Woman, they're not the centerpiece of like the product version of this movie, but the story version, they have like a lot of really lovely moments. It's just really cool, you know.
Those yeah, those things are like what are compelling to me in the reviews I read, that like getting more of those characters and them having more story is like interesting to me. But
Ray Fisher has a soothing voice. I could listen to that man talk for hours.
I've always thought that like kind of your most compelling point about these movies, these like Snyder superhero movies, and that I mostly agree with, is that they are so meticulously crafted. Like they really are like they are. They're very operatic, but it's also just style. You're right. It's like
it's just another way to do it.
Yeah, they're very stylish, and they're really well put together in a way that I always lament, like what the Marvel movies look like. I hate the way those movies look. They look like gray gravy to me. Now, I have to be honest that I also think Snyder's movies look like gray gravy, but they literally look like, I don't know how to describe this. They look like a different kind of more well-crafted gray gravy. You know what I mean? Like I
see more pre-production in his pre-visualized sequences.
Yeah, he's making very distinctive choices.
Yeah.
Where the Marvel movies very much feel like a almost a calculation to be uncalculated. You know what I mean? And there's even though I don't like the way Snyder's movies look, I do appreciate that they are well crafted. You know what I mean? Like
he has a go for broke style that's like, I can't promise that you'll like it. I can't even promise that it won't make you ill. But I can promise that this was a designed shot.
Yeah.
And not a just like pre-approved concept that we fill in.
And I can actually, I recognize the actual like kind of beauty and often majesty in like the images that he's able to like create. Yeah. I just like, to me, I'm always looking at them, and in particular, I mean like these DC movies that he makes, I'm always looking at them going like, why the fuck is the Flash not red? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's so desaturated is the wrong word, but it's like, it's so dark that it just is like nothing pops. And I get that is his thing, and that is part of the world and the universe that he's telling a story about. Like, I do appreciate all those things about it. I just am always like, why does this look?
Yeah, I want a circus of color.
Yeah. I'm not
I will say that this looks a lot more colorful than before. It still has that Snydery quality. It still is going to have that look to it. I mean, that just comes with the package. But like there are a couple scenes that like really, really, really pop.
That's cool.
And I'm actually really happy that like, you know, Superman wears the black suit in this.
Yeah.
And he's barely in it though, but he wears the black suit in this. And in the Whedon cut of Justice League, his costume looks like fucking garbage. It looks like terrible cosplay that just was airbrushed in like the 2 seconds before they shot. Yeah. And like now he looks cool.
Yeah.
And also too, it's like, wow, they just threw a couple more bucks at the mustache. You don't even notice. Like he looks completely normal. It's not even a thing.
Well,
whereas in the original, you're like, Jesus, that mustache issue is a bad thing.
Well, this is one of the weird curiosities of this Snyder Cut, which is just like the whole reason the mustache was an issue was because of the cut production and then having to come back. So if we're to believe that all of this footage is either Snyder's own original footage or then anything he had to pick up all these years later in getting to finish his movie, I actually don't think the mustache would even be, and I don't think the mustache would actually be in any of the footage used for this product.
I would say that almost none of the Superman footage from the first cut exists here.
Right, yeah.
And where it does, like the scene where evil Superman fights everybody, that's here. And that was one where you do notice the mustache a little bit.
Okay.
Here you didn't.
Right.
But that scene is also much longer. There's like I don't want to spoil too much, but like the big fight scene at the end of the original is quite literally they just got to like punch the guy until they win.
Right.
In this one, there's this crazy timing thing where Flash is running in circles around the area to try and generate a charge so that he can charge Cyborg, so he can enter the mother box, and they've got to distract. There's laser guns. The Batman's on a laser cannon shooting demons at him.
I mean, that sounds awesome.
Insane.
That sounds awesome.
But, you know, if it's your kind of thing, I honestly think you'll enjoy it more than you won't. And it's divided into parts.
Yeah.
So, like, even though it's not like you press play on different parts, it seems very aware of its length to the point where, like, you can put down an issue of the trade paperback and come back to it later. It has that feel.
I mean, in my memory, like I didn't like BVS that much, but in my memory, the best parts of BVS were Batman dreaming about the future that I assume is in this movie. You know what I mean?
I think
Like to
but
some
there's also
extent.
another dream that's like fucking crazy.
Okay, cool. Yeah. But
And I
like,
will say that there's an interaction between Batman and the Joker, and say what you will about Jared Leto's Joker or
yeah,
about Jared Leto's existence,
yeah,
but the way that him and Batman go back and forth with one another is one of the most accurate depictions of their dynamic I've ever
yeah.
seen in a movie.
That's cool.
And it came out of nowhere. I'm like, that's very weird. This feels very much like the enmity that they have for one another.
Have they interacted at all in this universe before?
No. I mean, there was
Because
in
Birds of Prey
Suicide Squad.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
But even that,
Squad.
like, that wasn't anything. It was just a Batman-like figure jumps on
Right.
his car. So there's
Right.
really no, like,
Yeah.
there's no, but it's only a short scene here, but
Yeah.
it's wild. And it's one of those things where it ends and there's so many cool things set up and you go, huh, like we're not going to see where this goes. I mean, maybe we will see where this goes in this reality. Who knows what happens?
I mean, he's been talking about what he was going to do with future movies, like in the press, in such great detail that I kind of think that's almost him confirming, like, I'm not going to get to do this, so here is all of the material,
It's wild. There's a few things that I would love to see, or at least would love to see fleshed out. But at the same time, it's like, I guess we should probably just take a breather at this point from this one and move on. But look at that. We ended up talking about it. Really, I wanted to recommend this incredible movie. You got to watch this movie.
Yeah.
The Empty Man.
Oh, dude, I am dying to see this. Yes.
You got to watch it.
Yeah.
I fucking bought it. I mean, I rented it. It was one of those where I'm like, I just want to see. It's like 2.5 hours long. It earns every minute. It's a supernatural mystery, but it reminded me of something like Sinister, only it has like a little bit more class to it. It's not as much of a just multiplex horror movie, which Sinister's pretty fucking cool.
I like Sinister a lot. Actually. I would like. It's good. I haven't
seen the sequel, but Sinister has like a couple images that I still think about. Like it's legit scary.
Is that a Scott Derrickson?
Maybe I can pull that up. Sinister is a Scott Derrickson. Yes.
Okay.
And it's written by him and Cargill. So those two guys.
Yep.
But yeah, The Empty Man stars James Badgedale.
Yeah.
Of the Pacific, which is called that because it's specifically about the Pacific Front of the World War II. Just kidding, silly joke. And
Tori loves him from something, but I can't think of what it is.
Is it the show Rubicon?
Oh, maybe actually.
A lot of people
feel like she's told
Rubicon.
Me yeah. That might be it.
I haven't seen it, but I hear that's good. He's a really solid actor, and he's just doing like blue collar former cop. Girl goes missing, but there's also this legend of the empty man, where if you're on a bridge at night and you find a bottle and you think about the empty man and you blow into the bottle, whoo, on the first day you hear him coming. On the second day you see him. On the third day he gets you. And so this girl goes missing, and so he is investigating it. And I love cryptids and cryptozoology and all that stuff. And the theory of a tulpa. Are you familiar with what a tulpa is?
Tell me about a tulpa. No.
A tulpa it's kind of like, it's an interesting, fun piece of mythology. It's also the way that a serious cryptozoologist gets around to ever having to come up with any proof of anything. Because what a tulpa is, it doesn't mean that it's real. But if enough people believe that something is real, we can then, through psychic energy, manifest it.
Mm-hmm.
So even though the Loch Ness Monster has been proven time and time again to be a complete hoax, a guy admitted on his deathbed of that original Nessie photo that he took it and said, but because so many people have believed it for so long, the theory is that Nessie has now been generated by our psychic energy.
Right, yes.
So this plays with the mythology of the empty man being a tulpa of sorts.
Cool.
It does some weird shit with the mythology that I dare not spoil.
Cool.
But let me tell you, it is delicious.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you want to watch this movie, watch the first 20 minutes. You won't be able to turn it off.
Yeah.
Because the first 20 minutes is like a prologue that is not related to the story until much, much later, like almost to the end. So it's just this nice little contained horror movie of mountain climbers in the Arctic coming across the Empty Man.
Cool.
And it is deeply, deeply scary. Oh, man. I almost rewound the first 20 minutes to watch again before watching the rest of the movie because it's such a tight little horror flick right at the beginning of a big, sprawling horror mini epic. Highly recommend. I could not recommend it enough. Let me just throw some names on here.
Because I would like to talk about this director. I've seen a short film that this guy made, and it was so good that I have basically spent the past couple years being like, am I ever going to hear that guy's name again? Like, how has he not made a movie?
David Pryor.
Yeah, David Pryor.
And so are you talking about AM 1200?
Yes, I am.
I have not seen that.
AM 1200
is 40
great.
Minutes?
Yeah, the only reason I've seen it is because our mutual friend, Madeline Kessner, screened it at South Street Cinema.
Oh, okay. And it's got Ray Wise.
Yes. It's great. It is like a Cthulhu story, basically. But
that.
Kind of similar to what you're talking about. It's like for 20, 30 minutes, it's just this like kind of like psychological horror story where like something is happening to this guy and it's unclear whether it's just happening to him or actually happening in the world, and he's like responding to it, you know?
Okay.
And as he is kind of, if I remember right, he's like kind of tracing a signal. He's like receiving some kind of signal and he's trying to follow it. And he eventually traces it to like a radio tower. And then like the last 10 minutes is him finally getting inside the radio tower and it becoming like a very expressly supernatural event.
That sounds cool.
It's really cool. It's just very atmospheric and very effective for like 30 minutes. You're just like, nothing is happening, but I'm like glued to my seat. Like I don't really know what's going on, but I'm so curious. And then for like 10 minutes, you're like, oh my God, like what is happening? You know what I mean? Like
that's kind of what this is for 2.5 hours.
I'm
really that first part's a vacuum, but then like for the next 2 hours, excuse me. I've eaten a lot of chili this week because I just made bulk chili so I wouldn't have to buy food. For those 2 hours, it's a lot of like, okay, I think I know, kind of thing. Yeah. And then I don't want to call it a rug pull, but then as you start to learn more information through our surrogate, it's very cleverly done. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people might come out of it being like, oh, that's kind of cheap, but I disagree. There's once everything's contextualized, it's really, really unsettling.
This movie
I could not have loved this more.
I mean, this movie is an interesting case of, I have heard, as you just kind of suggested, I've seen a lot of reviews that comment they do not like the ending. That they are not into the ending of this movie. They think the ending kind of sucks. But I'm talking, these are sometimes 4 and 5-star reviews of this movie that are like, it's such a good fucking movie, it doesn't even matter that I didn't like where this ended up. It is so effective and works so well. You should watch it even if you're going to end up feeling like I do by the end of it. And that to me is like that's actually pretty wild. Like I that makes me really want to see it.
I could understand why someone would think that it's like a cop-out ending, but it's one of those where I would disagree really hard because like when I first learned the information that I'm referring to, I was like, oh, okay. But then as I just almost immediately started going back and thinking about certain moments of the movie and how it's informed by this, it's like really earned. I think they really, really earn it. And there is like, I love the idea of tulpas as someone who loves dumb esoterica. I like that idea a lot. And they really dance around inside the mythology of a tulpa, and they use it to fuel the horror. And like I said, so often in these circles, you see the idea of a tulpa being I don't have to produce evidence. We made it real just by believing. And it's like, like Santa Claus would be the ultimate tulpa. Right. If tulpas were a real thing. Yeah. Enough kids believe it becomes real. Yeah. And honestly, we could argue that is indeed the fact, even if he's not tangibly real. Right, yes. And so it uses that in a way that says, but what are the connotations of tulpas if this was a thing? Like, how would that apply? And man, it's fucking. Whoo! I just got to chill thinking about this one particular thing. I'm very looking forward to this. You should watch it tonight, man. It's one that I wouldn't wait on. Spend the money. If the purchase is $2 more than the rental, purchase it. I'm pissed that I paid for the rental because I should have just bought the movie because I'm going to watch it again.
Well, this gives me somewhat of a good jumping off point, which is like
I totally just picked my nose on a YouTube. I'm sorry, guys. It's been a week. It's been a real week, and it has been a day.
I'll use that as a jump off point to just say, like, the only reason I might not have time to watch this movie like this week is I have been watching pretty much everything that Adam Wingard has ever made over the past like week. I'm working on an article for Movie John just as like a primer for like Adam Wingard in the lead up to Godzilla vs. King Kong. And as you and our listeners know, I'm a big fan of his, but really only off of like 3 or 4 movies. Like I've only seen his very recent sort of major releases, and he had actually a pretty big career as like a super indie filmmaker leading up to things like You're Next and The Guest. So I've been going through a lot of that stuff.
Did you watch A Horrible Way to Die yet?
Not yet. That one I'm probably going to watch this weekend.
That's a big old AJ Bowen role that rocks.
Really looking forward to that. What I did watch, and I'm curious if you've seen this. I watched Pop Skull. Have you seen Pop Skull?
I saw Pop Skull probably like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It was on Netflix, and it was this was before I had a concept. Like I really only knew like Wingard. I was like, that's one of those names that's kind of like been thrown around. I didn't really know what to do with it. And I remember watching it and being like, this is fucking cheap. Yeah. But also being like, this is pretty effective. Like as I understood it, I was like, this is definitely like a buddies in the backyard making a movie.
Yes.
And but there was a lot that I remember being impressed by it tonally. But I it's been so long that I really could not tell you much more than that.
Well, like I gave it 2 stars because I pretty much, I mean, I think you're spot on in exactly what you're saying. It's like narratively, and this is not to even say it's like bad or dumb or anything, but like narratively, I just like I couldn't go for it. Like it wasn't totally gripping me necessarily. And part of that is because it straight up is like made with. I mean, I'm not saying this because I know this. I'm saying this based on how it looks. It really looks to me like it was made with like cameras bought at Walmart by 19-year-olds who made a movie together. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's probably fairly accurate. Those details could be. That's
essentially how they all started.
Yeah,
exactly. That's what it is.
And so it's like, it feels like a movie made in somebody's mom's basement with pretty cheap cameras. It looks that way. The acting kind of feels that way, but it's full of these like really, I mean, the whole thing is about kids robo-tripping. That's like essentially what the plot is kids like robo-tripping. And like,
now that you say that, I do remember, because like I've robo-tripped.
Yeah.
It's not great. I've never been a fan of such things.
Yeah.
But I remember being like, this captures that weird creeper feeling that you get when you've had too much honey cough.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what he's trying to do is sort of get that experience across, and I think it's kind of successful in that. But like the visuals of some of the kind of like trippier elements of the movie are really just him like, zooming in on Christmas lights too much, or like, I think like maybe recording a extreme close up of the road while zooming on the road with a car or something. You know what I mean? Like, and he's just sort of like layering all of these images and lights and colors together and sort of like slowing some of them down, speeding some of them up. It's like, it's kind of an amazing feat of like editing. Like a sort of like, hey, I literally have nothing. I have nothing to create production value. So I'm going to create production value just through like stuff that like you would normally look at and be like, this was a mistake. Somebody like zoomed the camera in too far to capture this. You know what I mean? Using that with intent. Going like, well, I am going to zoom in too close. And then I'm going to overlay that with this like footage that's been filmed too fast. And then I'm going to overlay that with this footage that's been filmed too slow. And he just ends up creating these like very compelling images out of nothing. And it like, to me, it was like one of those movies where it's like, I totally get why this movie gave you a career. And it's not that this movie gave him a career, but I get how somebody watches this like totally cheap, no budget movie that's frankly not very good and goes like, this is a very creative, talented person. Like this person should be given more money to see what can be done.
Get this man a kaiju.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, it's experimental, but like not even like the sense you'd think of experimental, almost more like this is a filmmaker just doing an exercise.
Right.
Like, but also just trying to make something complete.
Yeah. It's, the other thing, so I've been watching a ton of short films of his. A lot of them are just floating around on like YouTube and Vimeo and stuff, and most of them are him just experimenting with like lights and colors and sound design. That's actually the other thing that's very good about Popsicle is the sound design. And like he clearly has like a natural talent for like the rhythm of editing and stuff like that. Like his movies are very well edited. I feel like I've noticed that even more watching some of these older ones, which is interesting to think about, where it's like
that's something that always like came to the forefront of Blair Witch for me.
Yeah,
that's a movie that kind of lives and dies by its editing and soundscape, since it's trying to one up what was a really sparse found footage thing, and adding a supernatural element which the original doesn't necessarily have on its face.
Yes, yeah.
But the editing is the editing and the soundscape are really, really, really prominent in that and kind of necessary. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. It's been really cool, actually. It's been like a really fun journey to go through like his old stuff and see a bunch of stuff that is like not necessarily good, quote unquote, in the way that like, I mean, if we're comparing it to the Hollywood studio movies that we're maybe thinking of otherwise, they're not good, but they're very interesting, and they definitely to me are like, and also they're all the things that I like about him specifically, right? Like the reason I really like his movies are because of the way he uses soundtrack with imagery, and because of the way he uses Pop-Tart lighting schemes, and because of the way it's like all of that stuff has been in his movies since he was like 17 years old and working with kids he went to high school with. It's really amazing to me to see that like, oh, this is like what he's been doing since he started doing this stuff and had no money to do it. So that's been like a very cool journey. Yeah, yeah.
Because you go, man, he just. I mean, you look at him and like, I mean, that whole crew, like the Swanbergs, the Ty West and all that, their goal was just like, I'm going to make a movie, damn it.
Yeah.
And it's not going to matter whether it's whatever you need it to be. I'm going to get this movie done. And I love the idea of learning by doing. And I think that filmmakers that learn by doing end up being better filmmakers. And I'm sort of a learn by doer myself generally.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like, that's inspiring to see.
I saw like a 90-second interview clip with him. He was at a film festival somewhere. Somebody got him for 60 seconds on camera. And the question they asked him was like, what's your advice to independent filmmakers? And his advice was, you're going to have to make a lot of choices because you have to make those choices because you don't have another angle to shoot this from. You don't have the money to get a set for this. So you just have to do it in somebody's house. You're going to be forced into a lot of choices. Never let the audience know you were forced to make that choice. Always make that choice feel like it's a choice you made because you're making that choice. That this was like a necessary creative, that it's a creative choice you're making. And that is literally, I think I watched Popsicle on the heels of that interview, and it was like, oh, that's what this is. He's literally in his mom's basement, but doing everything he can to convince me, like, no, I had to shoot it this way. I meant to shoot it this way.
This was my vision.
Yeah.
That's a really, really, really well put piece of advice.
Isn't it? It's like I was like, this is the best 60 seconds of advice I've ever heard for like movie making.
It's true. I mean, I got advice from a comedian years back when I was doing comedy, and I referred to how I also worked as a waiter at the time.
Yeah,
and I remember the comedian just saying like, "Why tell him you're a waiter? Tell him you're a comic." You could used to be a waiter, but they don't need to know that.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. He was like, that changes the dynamic almost completely. And so like, that was essentially being like, I told that joke because the truth forced me to tell it that way. And it's like, no, you don't have to make that choice.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure. You have to wait tables to pay bills because, you're not a great comic, but like, you're a fucking comic. Go. And like, that was a really good, it's a similar kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Wild. And I revisited You're Next like a week or two ago, just because that's one of my favorites. And I picked up the Blu-ray for real cheap.
How's it look on Blu?
It looks great. And that's just like, as a writer, that is like the script that is always in the back of my head whenever I'm writing something. I see you.
She's so
she just wants attention. Well, her mom's gone too. And even though I'm her favorite, she just needs the attention is now cut in half.
Yes,
Stinky, I see you. And watching that, every time I watch that movie, I'm just in awe of that script. I think it is so remarkable. It's so tight. It's so funny. It's like really like good drama, good comedy. It's just a fucking ripping slasher.
Yep.
And it follows as many slasher rules as it breaks, and it has such a blast doing it. But it is airtight, and just anytime I'm writing a movie, I'm like, that is the degree of fucked up, fun, scary, silly, like that. It hits all of the, and that's a credit to the direction too. But
yeah,
I just look at that script and I can't believe that something so well done. Hello, that something so. If she puts her asshole in front of the camera, I'm gonna be so pissed. She keeps doing that on every Zoom call, and so cats love to do that. They just love putting their asshole near a little poopy balloon knot, and my God, she's lining up for it.
Yeah.
She doesn't realize she's doing it, but that's what they do. But yeah, anytime I write something, in the back of my head is you're next, you're next, you're next. It is just, it's so good.
I'm with you. That's one of those like deceptively simple movies. It's like it's so straightforward, but it's so creative in the way that it's like, I don't know, toying with some of those ideas and stuff. It's so much fun.
It's like typically like the last thing any slasher actually needs to be successful is a smart script.
Right. Yes.
All the other pieces do it. And then this one delivers all of those pieces and a smart script.
Yeah.
That's so, like kind of unique.
It's so finely tuned. And like Barrett is kind of the other half of Simon Barrett, the writer of that, is like the other half of, I think a lot of Wingard's best work is when Barrett is also involved in it.
They hit that sweet spot just as well with The Guest.
Yes.
I mean, I could be talking about that exact same movie with all these same words.
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't have to talk about this too much, but they did just announce that the two of them are working on what is expressly a Face-Off sequel. And I couldn't be more excited. I mean, just to have the two of them working on something again together, and that's what it is. Like, okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're sequelizing Face-Off. What angle would you take it?
Well, I don't know exactly, but here's what I will tell you, because I think this is like pretty new news. Wingard was just interviewed like a couple of days ago, I think, and the person interviewing was trying to suss out like, okay, so you're saying it's a sequel, but like, what does that mean? And he was like, I know, everybody keeps being like, yeah, okay, Adam, you say sequel. We know what you mean is another movie with the technology in the same world.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's not what I mean. He's like, to me, Face Off is not about the technology. It's not about any of that. It literally is about Castor Troy and Sean Archer. If we're making a sequel to that movie, that's what the movie is about. He's like, I'm not going to tell you more than that, but that is like our sequel is like, that's what it is. It's a Sean Archer. So I think he's saying, without saying it, that like they're trying to get John Travolta and Nick Cage back to do it. And
that excites me greatly, because if I had that job, I wouldn't even consider doing that. Right. I'd be like, let's do another story involving this tech, and we'll tweak. We'll try to sequelize and one up just switching of faces. We'll have something else switch with it. I don't know what I'd do with that yet, but yeah, that's like. Well, that's pretty wild.
So I guess I don't remember this specifically, but I guess technically Cage's character dies at the end of Face Off. But the interviewer was like, so like, you keep saying it's a sequel, you keep implying it's like going to be these kids. Like, how does that work? And Wingard basically like kind of shrugs and goes like, well, if you think about it, they do show him sitting on like a stretcher and somebody is tending to his wounds the last time we see him. Like, why would they have tended to his wounds if he died from that? Like, so he's like,
works for me. Yeah, and that's the best part is it doesn't even have to be perfect.
Yes.
Who gives a shit?
No, I know. Exactly. Well, that's the other thing I keep thinking is like, I mean, why couldn't the sequel to Face Off still involve those two actors and those two characters? Because like we're just talking about guys that have surgically replaced their faces a bunch of times with each other.
Yeah.
Like, couldn't
it doesn't even have to be those two guys.
Like, couldn't we end up in a world where those two actors are in the movie and are maybe those guys, but maybe the question of the movie is, are they these guys?
I'm into that. Like, I'm totally into that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, there's with something as high concept as Face Off.
Yeah.
Everything's on the table.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And I don't think that any development could result in people being like, what the fuck is this? This is a true Face-Off. It's like, no, it doesn't matter, man. Like, that's not why we're here. Will there be a boat race or boat chase? Yes, I'm in. Sold. Done. I'm
very fascinated that Wingard has continued to, take on these big intellectual properties just because he said it himself, and I've been watching so many interviews with him, so I have all this, like, knowledge at the top of my tongue. he like said in an interview recently where he was like, yeah, I learned a lot on Blair Witch and Death Note about like what fandoms actually want out of these movies, because I didn't have great success with the fandoms of either of those properties with my movies. And he didn't get too specific. He was like, but I feel like I kind of understand why, and I'm very excited to bring that kind of like learning curve to things like Godzilla and King
He's
Kong
learning
and
as he goes.
Off, and yeah. So I'm pretty interested in what that means. Like the fact that he's continuing to do these things, I do think means that like he must have some sort of idea about really what would make a good Face-Off sequel to audiences and himself. Like I get the impression he's a guy that wouldn't do it if he wasn't actually interested in it himself.
Yeah.
But I also think he's had enough bad experience with fandoms now that he probably wouldn't do it if he didn't think he could also deliver something that an audience would want too. You know what I mean?
I think too. There's also just like, I think we've reached a point where you just have to ignore fandoms. You just got to give them, because if you give them exactly what they want, they're not going to want it. It's just always the way. But I feel like what I like about Wingard is this is a guy who really, really, really loves genre movies.
Yeah.
In the way that like a Tarantino did back in the day. And it's like, whether you end up liking what he makes or not, I watch something like Blair Witch, I watch something like Death Note, and I go, this is clearly a filmmaker who tackled this from the point of, we're going to have a little fun with this.
Oh, yeah.
And, and I think that is infinitely more important than any sort of allegiance to canon or anything like that. I thought Death Note kind of ripped. I liked that movie. I mean, I thought Blair Witch was awesome. And it was because he was having a blast with it.
I'm the number one Wingard fanboy, so you can't trust me, but I like both of those movies. Quite a bit.
They're good movies.
Yeah.
And he's having fun. He's doing fun needle drops. He's just like, the release of Blair Witch, the fact that it was the woods for a year leading up to it, and the only way anyone found out was when they mentioned a character's name during San Diego Comic-Con. They're like, Heather.
Yeah.
That to me reads as a guy who is like, part of the fun of horror is that huckster element of like, I'm going to scare you. If it doesn't make you shiver, you're already dead. Like, it's just like, it has that aspect to it. I love that. And I think that what has persisted about Face Off goes beyond the novelty of it. It's the fact that it's a movie that even though it plays everything completely straight, that is a movie about the fun of that movie.
Yeah.
Like that. Of course, I almost said Ang Lee. Of course, John Woo. Although I would totally take an Ang Lee Face-Off.
That would be an amazing movie.
But like John Woo doing his sort of melodrama and applying it to this like ridiculous high concept is in the name of fun. I don't think that an ounce of Woo. He might have presented it seriously, but I don't think he took it seriously for a second in that way. And I think that's what Wingard's gonna bring to it as well.
John Woo movies are nothing if not fun. If you ask me, melodrama is essential to some good fun. So
absolutely,
I don't think those two things are necessarily exclusive.
Well, and I think that like he builds the drama seriously, but like
he does. Yeah,
I think that he does it like he understands that the idea of I want to take his face off needs to have that drama, but like. The whole point of that line is because we all go, ah! Yeah. And so I think that Wingard has that same energy. And honestly, like if you look at something like the dinner scene in You're Next, it's not quite as brooding of melodrama, but that is heightened interpersonal drama designed to make us have fun. Dude, and I'm totally into it. This Godzilla movie is going to be so killer. Oh, it's going to be so good.
I cannot wait for this Godzilla movie. The relationship between AJ Bowen and Swanberg's character in Your Next is so funny.
Because he says something like, "Oh yeah, because AJ Bowen's a professor,
right?
And he's dating the girl that used to be his student, right. And he's like, oh yeah, but she dropped the class because we thought that would be inappropriate, and he's just like, yeah, that's unprofessional." And he's like, what was that?
Yeah.
It's like, what? I was just agreeing with you. He's like, no. And I think he says something like, I was just agreeing with him. And he's like, no, I'm actually right here. You can say that to me if you want. Like, it felt like real, like when me and my sister get at it back in the day, that's how we did it.
Yeah.
And it was just, but in the sense of that scene, we're not supposed to be like, this guy's the good guy or this guy's the bad guy. We're just supposed to be like, this is fucking fun.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
You are supposed to be in, and I can't remember the final girl's name in that movie now, but you're very much supposed to be in her shoes, where you are the guest at this dinner party, and you are watching the family dynamics unfold in front of you, and they're funny and weird and uncomfortable. Like, you are as uncomfortable as she is, but also probably snickering to yourself in the same way that she probably is, you know?
And they're like just normal enough that you're like, well, you know, it's a dysfunctional family. Everyone's family's crazy. It's the kind of thing. And then, you know, as we learn, that's not. It's much
They're highly
insane.
Dysfunctional.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. So
movie.
good.
Love it.
Man, watching that, there's like all these little choices that really made me laugh. When Amy Simons' character, they agree, is the one that's going to run outside to the car quickest, and she gets by the thing.
Yeah.
The one thing that he focuses on, but only for a split second, is she stands up and she gets herself set, and then she like cracks her neck to do it. Yeah. And it's this tiny little bit of foreshadowing that you don't even know is there. But it's just enough to like set you up for that moment to just be so funny and so fucking mean and gruesome, and
that moment
it's so good.
Such a, again, it's like just his editing and stuff, the way they build up to that moment, and then it's slow-mo as she finally starts to run, like all the build up to her starting to run, and then it goes into slow-mo with like a needle drop as she's running, only to end the way it does. It's like, it is such finely crafted, like, man, just an explosive moment. Yeah, love it.
I might watch The Guest tonight now that we're talking about this.
Ooh,
it's been a couple little while since I've seen it.
Yeah, can always recommend that movie.
Although I might just be watching John Wick 3 because I bought the 4K of like the box set, and I watched the first two again, and like it's just that's a series.
Beautiful movies.
Beautiful. High art.
Yep,
high art in the shell of low art.
2 is still where it's at for me. I feel like that actually is like high art action cinema. I love
revisiting it, and actually looking at my Letterboxd review of 2 when I first saw it. I was like, oh, this is even better than the first.
Yeah.
I'm gonna walk that back.
Yeah.
Just because I think the first one has the perfect mix of emotional resonance, thematic resonance, and killer action.
Yeah.
Whereas 2 steps up the action.
Yeah.
It's just kind of still running forward with the same emotional through line.
Yes.
And so I think it loses a little bit of the urgency there. And I mean, minuscule. You know, I'm talking like if the first movie's perfect, this one's just like a little less perfect, but it's still perfect.
Well,
but at the same time, like I'm eager to see how I feel about that once I get the third one in, because there is an aspect to those movies of the world that only comes together writ large that I think adds so much value to it that simply isn't in the first one because it wasn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Watching them all back to back, because I did that recently as well. I think I watched all 3 of them in like a weekend somewhat recently. And like when you watch them back to back, there is a pretty distinct jump from 1 to 2. Yeah. Because one really does in comparison feel smaller and ultimately tighter. It feels like a tighter movie. That I do agree with you. I think that movie has much more emotional resonance, and I think that is kind of worthwhile, maybe beyond what we get to with the sequels. But something about 2, I just think is like, I do think I agree that it is maybe not as functional of a movie. I know it's not precisely what you're saying, but like it just, something about it is so beautiful to me. It's like it really, that movie just like goes to this sort of like where style becomes substance. Like it hits that thing for me. You know what I mean?
It finds a style that sort of defines the series that isn't quite there in the first one. Because I think the first one is trying to pay a little bit of homage to our 1980s actioners.
For sure.
With Mayhem being one of the bad guys and all that, and the big. Whereas the second one is very much like we want to step up these stunts and we want to paint them pretty colors.
Yeah.
And like when he goes to, is it Ibiza? I don't know. When he goes to actually assassinate the lady, that's the job that he does.
Right.
And he's got to go through the
in Rome, I think.
It's somewhere like that, and he's got to go through the catacombs. I mean, that's just like, that's poetry. Yes. And I don't think the series ever gets higher than him and Common fighting one another. I'll tell you what, Common better be in part 4. Because I thought he was going to come back in part 3 with like a robotic heart or something.
Same.
He's got to come back in 4 because the way that is left, the professional courtesy, that is like that you won't find in 1.
Right.
You know, that's where 2 I think shines, is like, and even that segment where they first put the where he first puts like the $7 million thing on him, and we see a bunch of adjacent fight scenes intercut with one another that happen at different times. That's like really brilliant. That's like really brilliant direction and structure. Yeah. And so like the necessity for something like that wasn't in 1. So in that regard, 2 does surpass it. I just think the first one is kind of just a more complete experience by itself.
I think you're right about that.
But, whether that makes it better or not, who am I to say?
Yeah.
Because
taste.
I think if you slapped them both down on the table right now, I'm probably going to pick 2 to watch.
Yeah, man. 2 just has that like distinctive visual language that I think 1 doesn't quite have yet. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you're saying. It's like 1 is almost homaging things, and 2 is like we're literally going to invent like a new genre using John Wick. This is the
John Wick brand.
You know, and boy, I just love the way that all looks. Actually, and my favorite thing in 2 is the what is it called? The big art piece that he fights through at the end. It's got a name that's really cool. It's like the illusions of the self and the soul, or something like Reflections of the Soul. I think that's what I think. It's Reflections of the Soul.
Yeah. Which I feel like
fucking
guns and karate eliminated. Just walking through that is dangerous.
Yes,
I feel like that is a treacherous piece of art. Yep. But then you introduce gun kata and sign language.
Shit. Love it.
And and Ruby Rose as the mute villain, where they shit talk each other with sign language. Really well done. Really good choice. She's fucking scary and just kind of gets it. It's good stuff.
Tell you what, man, rather than run down because I've got other stuff we could talk about, but I think there's one thing we should end the episode on, which is one other movie that I know we both watched and both had a great fucking time watching. Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker. We got to talk about
that movie. Is demented.
It is so fucking crazy. I couldn't believe it. Like, I texted our group chat immediately. I don't even think I was done with it when I texted you guys, which I rarely do. Normally, it's like I wait until but I was like mid through the movie. It was just like, you have to see this movie. I've almost never seen. I mean, it's not that I've never seen anything like it, but I've almost never seen anything like it. It is.
I'll say I've never seen anything like it.
This shit is nuts. Wild.
That's one that until Shudder started announcing it and people started being like, "Yo, this is the one to check." I'd never even heard of it.
Yeah, I
never heard of it.
I know that I had seen it on some like slasher lists. Like Tori and I had made some for Cinema 76, and so we had been looking through all these lists of like different slashers and stuff. So I had seen that title like floating around, but it's not like I've literally never heard a person in life or even on the internet be like, "You should see this movie. It's a really weird gem," like
it doesn't get caught up into the canon at all. Right. And I feel like it does now, which kudos to Shudder. They're really good at kind of just educating us all in some horror history.
Totally.
But yeah, first off, it's one of those things. What I like about it is like you could almost say that it's like dated in the way that it like treats him in terms of like the cop thinking that he's gay.
Yes.
But it's also very progressive in that anytime the cop drops a hard F or is just like, "I believe this," everyone rolls their eyes at him like, "All right, caveman." Like, it's very weird. Like it kind of has its cake and eats it too in that way.
Well, and I think that this movie is one of those great. This movie is one of those great examples of like, I don't think the movie wants me to think that the cop is like a good guy or anything. So it's like, in my opinion, and in my experience watching the movie personally, I was not offended by how. And by the way, I guess we should put a content warning on it. Like they drop hard F words in regards to a not gay character, but like a lot, a lot, like more than I've heard that word in maybe any other movie.
Well, that's what I mean. Like it hits those like exploitative jolts that an exploitation film should have. But anytime he says something like that, every other character regards him as like, "Jesus, dude, calm that shit." Yeah, and the fact that the gym teacher who is gay is just like pretty fucking classy.
Yeah. And I think feels to me regarded by the movie itself as like a good character. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I think the movie, not that it even needs to do this, but to its credit, like does seem to have like a sort of the quote unquote right perspective on a lot of those things.
Yeah, I would say it has a more progressive streak than you would expect looking at its surface and that you would expect of its time period and its production quality.
I certainly at least knew that it wanted me to think these were like bad characters and stuff, So it was like all that stuff, like I actually was enjoying those aspects of the movie. I legitimately found it like pretty wild that like kept happening throughout the movie, and that
it goes to show too, like you can have all of your fucking gnarly offensive shit, and if you frame it right, you can still have it without it being something that we look back on with shame.
Yeah.
We look back at a lot of old Grindhouse movies and we laugh because you go, man, they had it backwards. But like, it is also part of what we love about them. And it's like, this proves like you could like people go, oh, you couldn't make that today. It's like, yeah, you could, just got to do the work.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think this movie just like, doesn't even have to quote unquote like get away with it. It just is like, I don't know. It's like, it's just doing that stuff right. Like it all just works.
Yeah, exactly.
For me. And like the thing that I really want to talk about though is, and I don't know this actress's name off the top of my head.
Susan Tyrrell.
Susan Tyrrell is fucking incredible in this movie. She is. So I mean, this movie is about a woman who sort of raises her nephew after his parents die tragically.
Horribly.
Yes. His parents die.
That motherfucker gets a log in the face.
Oh yeah, it is Final Destination shit. Like it is.
Yeah, he gets the kayak treatment from Lethal Weapon 2, but with a fucking tree.
He gets the Descented. He gets like it's pretty bad. And so his.
I would actually love to watch The Descent again to see if maybe they do some shot homages there, because I think that might be a direct influence.
It's what I thought of immediately. I was like,
didn't even occur to me.
I was like, I feel like Neil Marshall must have seen this movie.
Yeah.
But like, so it's about this woman. It raises her nephew because his parents tragically die, and then we get to him as a teenager. He's, I think, getting ready to graduate high school. He may go off to college, and this woman is clearly based her entire adult identity around raising this kid, and is growing. Is getting that empty nest syndrome. Is growing concerned about what her life is going to be once he leaves the nest.
And it's weirdly tied to her libido.
Well, I was purposely dancing around it in the way that I think the movie initially is trying to dance around it. I think the movie is initially trying to present like, oh, this woman raised this kid and now he's going to move away, and that makes her middle-aged sad,
Yeah.
But pretty quickly it becomes clear that like she is a horny middle-aged lady that is very horny for her nephew. Like, is expressly horny for her own nephew. And obviously the movie goes to places where it gets very deep into the idea of just how horny for her nephew she is. But we don't need to necessarily spoil all those things, because I think the movie is like very exciting to watch as these things unfold.
And even with all this information, I can promise our listeners that every 5 to 8 minutes or so, you're going to do this.
Yep.
You're going to do that meme of the guy who goes... because it is a web of surprises and delights.
It's one of those movies that is just incident after incident after incident. Each one is crazier than the one before it, and Susan Tyrrell goes from legitimately like pretty sexy middle-aged lady that is trying to get it and can, to straight up Universal monster movie. Universal monster.
She's wrestling people in a swamp at some point.
and I'm not kidding. She actually becomes a movie monster. Like, looks like a creature effect. And I'm not saying this to insult her. Does it without makeup? Like she does it with
performance. Yeah.
She transforms her whole body into like a bog witch figure. Just through performance. It's crazy. It's legitimately one of the coolest, craziest performances I've ever seen.
And to speak to the performance, it's one that, like, there are certain aspects where we're supposed to actually feel some empathy towards her.
Yes, absolutely.
And it gets there.
Yep.
And she's able to simultaneously evoke that pity that we feel towards her, an empathetic pity, as well as be terrified of her, to be angry at her, and to, want her to be destroyed like a monster should be. It's kind of remarkable, and it's not just the script. You got to watch. Have you seen Cry Baby?
I have not, and as soon as you told me she was in it,
dude.
I mean, it's John Waters' movie. I would like to see it anyway, but when you said that she is in it, and it's like John Waters starring this woman, that just like blew me
She's
the fuck
Ramona
away.
Ricketts.
It's like, I gotta watch it. Yeah,
I believe, if I remember correctly, her husband is Iggy Pop.
Oh, awesome!
But Cry Baby is like, it's not the trash era John Waters. It's a more mainstream
Studio Waters, yeah.
Yeah, and I think of his studio work that I've seen, I think it's far and away my favorite.
Okay,
it's just a great movie. But she's in it, and you know, she's able to, and actually, to speak to what we're talking about here, she is able to embody the trash characters that you would see in things like Multiple Maniacs or Female Trouble, Desperate Living, any of that. But also is perfectly at home in just a weird 1950s rock and roll, rock and roll musical comedy kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's, man, Crybaby's great.
I'm looking forward to seeing
super great, but she's really good at it. She's not like a main character, but she's part of the ensemble.
I just was blown away by her performance in Butcher, Baker, Nightmare. By the way, a very fun thing to do is, as you suggested, every 8 minutes something will happen that will blow your fucking mind. Every time something that blows your mind happens, turn to the person you're watching it with and say, Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker, indeed. Because that title...
What does that title even mean?
Makes no sense at all. So every time something crazy happened, I was just like, aha!
I was looking it up before. It's one of those movies that does have an
alternate title, right?
Yes,
yeah.
It is called Night Warning.
Yeah,
which makes
just
less sense, actually.
Yeah.
I feel like that doesn't work. Night Warning.
Yeah. But it's on Shudder right now. I cannot recommend highly enough that people watch Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker. It is so fucking fun and legitimately strange. And just Susan Terrell is like incredible in it. Like I need to find everything she's in because I loved her in it.
She's definitely like, you know, like if they were putting her on a poster next to like the Jasons and Freddys and Chucky's and all that, like I would not resist that at all. I think that it's that much of a big bad. Yep. Also, I'll throw this recommendation out there. This is a movie that I actually forgot that she's in, and she's very much in, and it's a movie that I think you would like, Forbidden Zone.
Oh, I would like to see this.
Like big Oingo Boingo soundtrack. Yeah. Richard Elfman directed. That's Danny Elfman's brother, I believe.
Okay, interesting.
You know, and it's got like a couple like dated elements. Like there's one thing that's like kind of rapey about it.
Okay.
But like it also is kind of very knowing about that.
Yeah.
But at the same time too, like you watch it and you go, oh, there's like I watched Forbidden Zone, and then I realized that the robotic devil in Futurama is 100% based off of Danny Elfman in this movie.
Whoa, okay.
And so, you know, it's like fun stuff like that. But it's a cool flick with some great music, but she is the queen in it.
Okay, cool. I wanted to see this movie for a while, so that's like awesome. That's
definitely
high recommendation. Cool. Awesome.
Let's
wrap this up.
Are we wrapping it up?
For a while. Let's do it. Let's
right
get
on.
the hell out of here. This was fun. People can find us everywhere. We're on moviejohn.com these days. You can find us everywhere at I Like 2 Movie. It's numeric 2. Facebook, Letterboxd, all that stuff. I'm on Letterboxd at Philadelphia. It's with an F, and Twitter there as well. And I think. Check out my other podcast, Killer Bees Podcast, Killer BS Podcast. We just released an episode on Jill
Solin.
I always call her Jill Jolene, and I think I realized we spent an entire episode calling her Jill Jolene, and only after the fact that I realized her name might be Sholin.
It could even be like Shoellen.
Right, yeah.
Or Sheila. I've never actually heard it pronounced out loud, so it could be anything.
Yeah, well, we called her Jolene for the entire episode.
Jolene.
Dan, you better believe that's how I opened the episode. Singing exactly that.
I haven't listened to that one yet.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yes.
Same everything at Dan Scully and all the things. Check out moviejohn.com. I just put up a review on Findy.com. April I pushed back the launch of my true crime piece because I just got derailed by this sickness.
Oh, dude.
And I needed to. I'm taking on a new role at work, so I gotta
double down.
And then check out Hot Property on Spotify. A little goofy comedy show I do, so check that out.
Yeah, hell yeah. My name is Garrett Smith, and I like to movie.
My name is Dan Scully, and I like to movie.
I'm gonna let you like to movie because we like to movie.